All right, let's go ahead. I'm going to call this meeting to order. First item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Kelly, can you lead us in the pledge?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to ask for everyone to take a moment for silent prayer or personal reflection. So get our heads in the right space. Thank you. At this time, I'll ask for a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Thank you, Mary. Second. Thank you, Paul. Any discussion?
I would like to request a revision of the agenda. I'm Mary Fay. I live at 525 First Avenue.
Typically, the discussion happens between the board.
Respectfully asking for revision. I understand that.
Your call.
We'll entertain what it is they get to say.
I would like to have this public comment moved up prior to your executive session.
We have items to discuss in executive session, and I'm perfectly happy leaving it where it is. We got some other stuff that we need to go over before we get to the business of the meeting.
But the public comment has to do with the executive session, which I understand you can't comment on any personnel items. But
Right, as well as the public can't comment on personnel items either.
you can't comment.
No.
All right, how about commenting on the policies of the school board?
We can certainly do that, but we can move the. Yeah, we can move the public comment session. If that's okay with everybody on the board.
Has to be moved by someone on the board, not from someone in the public, and then voted on. It doesn't matter order.
Yeah.
So move to put public comment ahead of executive session.
I'll second that.
Jim, Mary. Any discussion on that motion?
Where are we gonna put it?
You're saying,
Where are we
Right.
gonna move it to? You want to move it ahead of the discussion items too?
Ahead of the executive
She's-
session.
Oh, ahead of the executive.
so we're gonna move it in front of the executive
As far as
session.
executive session. I will do it.
That's fine.
That'd be like right now.
Yeah. right.
Yeah, so right now. Yeah,
Vote.
so I'll call the vote then. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, let's get into the public comment section here. I'm gonna go ahead and read the rules so that we all have a good understanding. The public is invited to speak about items on the agenda. The Board of Education has allotted 15 minutes for public comment. Each individual can speak for 3 minutes. The board can vote to increase the 15-minute maximum if it wishes. The following are not permitted: comments that involve personalities, comments about the performance or conduct of individual staff members, comments about specific and/or confidential student-related issues. Individuals may request to have an item for discussion placed on the agenda. The request should be submitted in writing to the district clerk, Mrs. Irizarry, no later than noon on the Wednesday prior to each meeting. So first up on the people that signed up to speak tonight is Leo Walters Tahara. I don't see that person in the room. Nobody's on Zoom. Okay. All right, next up then is Lee Filbert.
Would you like me to stand?
Right there's perfect.
Okay. All right, well, good evening. All right, Karen here? Okay, I thought so. I didn't recognize my glasses.
She's not even for.
I said, can't get away from Filberts, can you? They're everywhere. So as it currently stands, all unvaccinated school employees are required to test for COVID-19 on a weekly basis, while unvaccinated are exempt. This creates a situation where the private medical status of school employees are aired and indirectly communicated throughout their place of employment. And this is illegal, and it is by nature discriminatory. Okay. The school currently has an employee on unpaid leave who has been with the school for 3 years with an impeccable record, who is currently there for having stood up for her medical rights. She's offered reasonable compromises to the school, including paying for and providing antibody testing to be provided to the school, and then been denied despite the fact that natural antibodies are as good, if not better, at providing protection against COVID-19 infection
I think
than
we're
a
talking about a
vaccination.
specific personnel issue, which we can't discuss.
Okay, very well.
Yeah, discuss the policy.
But the point I'm making here is, in essence, we are about to deprive students, or we are contemplating depriving students of a qualified, capable teacher with a good record who is beloved by her students, all for something that appears to be very rapidly going away after she has offered to make what are to any logical mind reasonable accommodation. That's all I have to say.
All right, next up, we've got Tim Sherlock. Comment? Okay.
Got your timer?
I've got it.
You're right on, man.
Gotcha.
I think I've been here a couple times. Hi, guys. So I will try to keep it brief, keeping it to policy. I will say first thing that I do question is this limitation of the ability to speak about things that may coincide with personnel issues, especially if the policy in question either supports or hinders or loops around the conduct of the personnel. So I will take, for example, some of the policies, it has come to me, which is the board's main domain, are very antiquated. They're very out of touch. They do not coincide with current times. Looking at how we structure discipline in the schools, that matrix, the arbitrary nature by which we allow discretion builds to this climate that we have of it being not equitable. We're not looking at what each person brings to the table in standards in terms of discrimination or their own values, things that we talk about on the BEI committee, right? So looking at those, that raises alarm for me. How are we doing the best service for our students when we're not really looking at what we're doing for our teachers, for our administrators, or for our district on a whole, as far as these policies are concerned? Another item which somebody else is going to get into is the use of what we call in place of a parent. I'll leave the Latin phrase out of it. Understanding and helping our administrators and our personnel to understand the policies and when it is appropriate to use them and when it is not. And when they are misused, the real danger not only does it place to a child, but the district at large. We have employees that are not doing this appropriately, that are opening up this district to very serious liabilities. It is the board's responsibility to not just look at these recurring policies that the government says we must update every year, but we need to look at every policy we have on the books and ask ourselves, is it antiquated? Is it actually relevant? And if it is, does it rise to a level that allows Olean to be progressive? We don't have to follow the model of our Connect 4 We can set the standard, and we have forgotten that. We have forgotten that as a board, as a community, as a district. I mean, I am eager to listen to see how we vote on the policy coming before you guys on the social media. As we see in the news, it's not just our district that's having this issue. So I'm hoping that that will move forward, that we are taking the appropriate initiatives to move forward quickly. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. The next person, we have Anna Art Sledge.
Good evening. Tim actually just touched base a little bit with what I'm going to get into. I'm here to talk to you about in loco parentis, the phrase meaning in place of parents. Until last week, I'd never heard of this term or policy because of the nature of how I became familiar with it and what it means and how it should be used. I am concerned that it is being grossly misused in our school systems. By definition, it means that a parent gives some rights to the school to act in place of the parent when the child is in school or on school grounds. Meaning, during the parameters of a normal school day, the school becomes responsible for education, proper discipline, and safety of each student. Originally derived from English law, the doctrine is implied in two separate areas of the law. Only the first is for this situation. It grants educational institutions such as colleges and other schools discretion to act in the best interest of the students, although not allowing what would be considered violations of civil liberties. I would like to try to share an example. Stop me if you feel I'm getting too far into a personality of why I feel this policy is misused. Student A gets permission to use restroom during class time. Student A has to spend a few moments in the restroom for unknown reasons. Student B comes into restroom also ill, completely unrelated situation. Student A stands up to wash hands, feels dizzy, has a seat. Try to catch her breath. Teacher comes in and sees student A sitting down to see if she's okay. Student A replies, "Could you let my teacher know? I may need to go to the nurse." Still an unrelated cause, student B is still ill in the bathroom. Skip ahead to the nurse's office.
All right, we're getting too far into.
Okay.
Specific incident.
As a concerned parent, I had questions about the incidents that I can't speak of. And the only reason that I was given was because I felt like it. The question was, why would you tell my child that you're basically her parent? The phone was not used or being accused of being used to break any school rules or policies. Student A had no history of behaviors.
Yeah, we're into a specific situation.
Okay, well then I guess all I have to say is that I think that the policy for using in loco parentis is completely outdated, and I feel that it is being misused and that it needs to be relooked at. And I would like to ask the board to mandate trainings with proper and improper ways to use this for all school staff, as said incident that I can't speak of at the moment has created a lot of turmoil in not just school, but the household of said student. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for your input. So now we'll be moving on to our next portion of our agenda.
Okay, I'm sorry, I was unaware that I had to sign up prior to the meeting. When I used to serve on the school board, we would allow public comment. I was unaware I had to sign up ahead of time.
Okay. I think we can allow this instance. Go ahead, we'll give you 3 minutes.
I don't even need 3 minutes, but
Please state your name.
again, Mary Fay, 525 First Avenue in Olean. I would like you to strongly consider your personnel policies with regard to the masking mandate. New York State imposing the vaccination, the testing, and the mask mandate was unconstitutional. The executive branch of the state had no right to legislate those policies. And the Supreme Court has already struck down these mandates. It's in the courts right now. I would ask that you consider tabling any of your personnel issues with regard to these until the Supreme Court finally rules on it. There are several schools that are being sued for adhering to these unconstitutional rights. The Head Start teachers are suing the schools. Over half the states have rolled back the Department of Health's authority to impose these mandates. And I wish you would uphold the Constitution.
Yeah, I got this thing right.
Yes. Please state your name and your address, please.
My name is Mark Maynard. I live at 1904 West State Street here in Olean. Thank you for this opportunity. I also would like to speak to the policy regarding vaccines and testing and so on. And I think Mary Fay made some very good points about where we all know where this whole testing mandate and so on is going. And the lawsuits, nobody's won them yet so far. Nobody, because it's an unconstitutional mandate, which you know. I don't think it's that easy to find new qualified teachers. I think that you're willing to dismiss a teacher you have commended over this archaic, unconstitutional situation that has arisen when many offers of nationally recognized alternative testing methods have been proffered and yet rejected.
Let's stick to the policy.
Certainly. 63% of national teaching institutions say that the vaccination is not required. This is according to Ed Weekly, which I'm sure you're all very familiar with that publication. It's been the most premier publication in education since 1981. New York State does not report any testing results to Ed Weekly whatsoever. Only 3% equal termination nationwide. I think it's in motion that all of this is going away, whether it's considerably close to midterm elections is the reason or not, it's going away either way. I think our focus should be on the fact that we've got 4 schools in this district, all of which are below the 50th percentile in math, reading, overall comprehension. All 4 schools in this district are below the poverty level of education. I think that is a far greater thing for this board to be concerned with. Thank you for your time.
One minute. One, I promise to stay under
All
one.
right, this has got to be the last one. This is,
Okay, I understand.
sir.
I hear a lot of
Your
that.
name, your address.
Oh, my name is Kurt Zinks. I live at 2335 Kelly Drive in Allegheny. But I just want you guys to consider, as you're considering some of the things you have
You're
to.
not a resident of the district?
No, sir. No, sir, I'm not. But I go to church here. I do business here.
At this time, if he's, I live in this district.
It's okay? Is it okay?
Yeah, why don't?
This is not political or anything. I just want to appeal to your compassion, to your common sense.
Yeah, I can,
Most certainly can.
yeah. Let's let Nate speak.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, I'm sure the Allegheny School Board would like to hear about their policy as well.
My name is Nate Smith. I live at 1214 Irving Parkway in Olean, New York. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I represent a lot of people here who feel the same way. We disagree with the Olean school system's policy of vaccine requirement or weekly testing. We know the vaccine isn't effective scientifically, and you can still catch COVID and transmit the illness even if you're vaccinated. The largest private employer in the United States, Walmart, does not require the vaccine or weekly testing, and their employees had to work through the entire pandemic. The hardware store across the street does not require the vaccine or weekly testing, and we worked through the entire pandemic. So I ask you to please table whatever decision you're going to make in executive session. Think hard about this, because we're a small town. This is small town America, and we shouldn't treat each other this way. Thank you.
All right, thank you, everybody, for your input. That will conclude the 15-minute public comment section of the agenda. Now I'm looking for a motion to move into executive session for personnel issues.
So moved.
Yes.
Yeah.
Did we? Yes, we did.
Did you vote?
Oh,
We did.
wait.
Yes, I think we did, Taylor.
Yes.
We voted on the change to
You
the
changed it.
agenda.
You voted on the change. You don't think you voted on the agenda, just trying to keep.
I thought we did.
All right, point of order, let's take the vote on accepting the amended agenda that Mary and Paul made.
Yes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. Okay, so did we get a motion for executive session?
So moved.
Thank you, Mary.
I'll second.
Thank you, Janine.
Just personnel?
Just personnel at this point. Correct. Okay. All right, we will try to make this brief. Be back shortly. We're going to adjourn to the library. Mr. Wolf, can we have you come in as well? Thank you. Right back here. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and reconvene this meeting. Thanks everybody for hanging around. We're gonna push through some more stuff on the agenda here. Let's see, commendations are next. So we have a nice list of students who were honored with the Harold Dutton Spotlight Award. Opal Truman, Amira Schaefer, Miley Crawford, Ava West, Finn Kea, Ariana Cole, Peyton Tinley, Zach Tritley, Olivia Graham, Aaron Halio, Andrea Walker, Kenley Spears, Nick Jarenko, Ethan Odell, John Perkins, and Phoenix Langdon. It's a great honor for them. We want to say congratulations to the boys varsity basketball team on winning the Section 6 Class B1 title. Also, the girls varsity basketball team advanced to the Section 6 Class B1 semifinals. Chris Bargy competed in the New York State Wrestling Championship in Albany. Yeah. DECA, we had 8 students competing in the state career conference for DECA. The students were Chance Padlow, Emily Duncan, Connor Valenti, Rita Anamulaseti, Mackenzie Malloy, Michelle Groney, Tyler Camp, and Noah Trudeau. Emily won a medal for scoring the highest on the test in principles of hospitality and tourism. And this was Emily's first year competing in DECA. Chance is advancing to the New York State DECA officer for the 22-23 school year. That's quite an honor from that.
Very much.
From that event. That's pretty exciting.
Would you like me to read the next one?
Sure.
So congratulations to Olean YMCA. Salute to Olean recipients, Andrew Kea, Board of Education President, and also Dr. Colleen Taggarty, a former superintendent of schools. Many of us were there to honor these 2 individuals from our school district. We're very proud to do so.
Can I have your autograph?
Very much so. Congratulations.
Your presentation.
All right, next up, we had a student, thank you to, this is a thank you to the Olean Boundless Connections, New York State DDPC High School Job Coach Leah Graves, and assisting former student Connor Childs in obtaining an A+ certification for computer repair. And last, the Olean High School English Department is pleased to announce that our 2 Poetry Out Loud finalists who progressed to the regional competition went on to compete in the state semifinal. Rose Scordo and Lily Sheehan delivered fine performances throughout the competition.
We just had a couple more. Mike, can you put that back up again, please?
Yep.
So this is the link to Connor's, to that. It's on YouTube, and it's a presentation, more of an advertisement for the whole program. So that link will be available for everyone to see. And then on the next slide, please. Another thing that came up is we do have a teacher who's working on this about the Vietnam War. It's a 4-part film series on April 8th at 7 p.m. at the Hollywood Theater in Gowanda. Can you go to the next slide, please? And this gives a little bit of the background. Katie Wolfgang, our own Katie Wolfgang, is a teacher who has been working on this. We're very proud of her, and this is during our break. So it's a great opportunity for a great night out and good learning as well. You know, the next one, please. This, I'm donning a button right now on Down Syndrome Awareness Day, and I had some visitors come to district office. I was so pleased to get the pins that they had put together, and we had a chance to visit. They also had a chance to visit with other district office folks. So my thanks to Mrs. Mess's class. And I just wanted to recognize also and help to celebrate in a wider way Down Syndrome Day. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to some discussion items then. First on the agenda is the budget development update.
Okay, I promise to make this much more brief than we had at the Audit and Finance Committee meeting on Thursday evening. For the board members who were not able to be there, I did send out a lot of documentation, and there's much more detailed information there, so I'm just gonna give a brief synopsis of it this evening. We are gonna present a draft budget tonight. There is a chance that this will change slightly, but I do not anticipate any material changes between now and the time that you vote on the budget next month. So I know, and I apologize, this is small, but I promise that it's much bigger on the paper. So our budget for next year is projected to increase about 8.36%. Keep in mind, as our budget expenses increase, so too do our revenues. The most important thing to share is that this will be going out at a 0% increase to the taxpayers. So the tax levy for residents of the city of Olean School District will not change. Overall, $3.6 million increase in our budget. It's broken down into the three components that I'm going to go over briefly in the next few slides. The first part of the budget that we're going to look at is the administrative budget. This is going up 7.9%. This accounts for about 13% of our overall budget, $466,000 increase. And while we see administrative budget, oftentimes people think that is just a budget of the administration, and it's not. It is sort of deceiving. Some of the components of this portion of the budget include Board of Education expenses, central office, finance expenses, legal services, personnel expenses, public information costs, liability insurance, curriculum development, supervision, and employee benefits. Some of the areas that we are going to see increases for next year, salary and contractual expenses. We are seeing a significant increase in health insurance. If you ask anybody anywhere these days, everybody's seeing an increase in health insurance. Our health insurance premiums will increase 10% next year. We're also seeing an increase in the number of individuals picking up health insurance plans through the district. We're also seeing an increase in retirement costs. Keep in mind, retirement costs are connected to salaries. As salaries increase, so too do retirement expenses. BOE services, some of the increased services that we will be looking at is a PR service and print services through BOCES. This is a perfect example where we're leveraging our purchasing power through BOCES. We're able to buy services for personnel services that would not otherwise be full-time. This is a great opportunity where we can take advantage of that good budgeting. We're also looking for additional math support. We actually already purchased this year, but because we compare budget to budget, not actual expenses to budget, we're seeing this increase in the 22-23 budget. We will also see some additional recruiting and advertising expenses, primarily related to the retirements that we will be seeing over the next 2 years. As you know, we're seeing a significant number of retirements, so recruiting and filling those positions will be significant. If we move on to the program portion of the budget, this is the largest portion of the budget. 71% of our total budget covers the program portion. The biggest portion of this will be instructional costs, so you would expect this to be the biggest portion. It is increasing $2.5 million, about 8.22%. This includes everything involving the instruction of our students. This also includes anything co-curricular and extracurricular. So any of the clubs we have, any extracurricular events. It also includes transportation. As you'll see, we're seeing a huge increase in transportation expenses. Anybody who owns a vehicle sees it in their own personal pocket. Unfortunately, we're seeing it as well. Again, some of the changes for next year, we are seeing significant salary and contractual increases related to health insurance and retirement expenses. The enrollment in our special education program, we're also seeing increases there. As you've heard me report earlier throughout our presentations that, we have seen a significant number of students come to the district this year. Transportation costs. We're seeing a significant increase in our transportation costs. One thing to keep in mind with that, the services that we pay for are aidable. So we're seeing a significant increase next year in transportation costs. The following year, we will see that increase in transportation aid. That is an expense-driven aid. We're also seeing some increases for equipment purchases. A lot of this has to do with outside equipment items that we're in need of as well. Special patrol officer services, particularly in the OIMS building. We're looking at full-time opportunities there. College level classes, this is really something to celebrate. We have more kids taking college level classes. This is a great opportunity. Our kids are really, really fortunate to have these opportunities. We also have increased number of students attending our BOE programs, particularly CTE programs. One thing I wanted to note, while we are seeing a significant increase in our BOCES budget at about 11.35%, that is another example of where we see that increase in expense in the 22-23 school year. We will then see an offsetting increase in the revenue in the following year for BOCES aid. And lastly, we are seeing an increase in the purchase of supplies throughout the district as well. The capital portion of the budget. This accounts for about $7.5 million, 9.37% increase for next year. Overall, it's a 16% of our total budget goes to capital expenditures. Primarily the operations of and maintenance of our plants. So as you see our facilities and our grounds, this is what that expense goes into the capital portion of the budget. The purchase of a new school bus is also considered into this increase. Debt service, so any of the payments that we spend on our bonds to offset the building projects that we have done. The expense portion is in this side of the budget. Keep in mind on the revenue side, that building aid comes through there, so they offset each other. Changes for next year, again, same thing that every other business and household is seeing, increase in utility expenses. We have really, really been hit hard the last 2 months, so we are projecting for increased expenses next year too. We're hoping that's an area that at the end of the year, next year, maybe we haven't spent all of that, but we have to plan for it. Building condition survey, as you know, New York State Education Department requires us to conduct a building condition survey. Ours is due next year. So we are budgeting for the cost of that. The following year, we will see that offsetting building aid coming through. As I indicated, we are looking at the purchase of a bus. We will use funds from our reserve to fund that. Bond anticipation notes are the payments that we make on our capital projects. That is going up next year a little over $100,000 because we will start to pay on the $24 million project that will start in a few months. And lastly, additional equipment purchases that fall within the capital portion of the budget. Looking at the revenue side of things, as you can see at the bottom of the screen, you can't see any other print, but you can see that at the bottom. The most important part is that the tax levy will not increase for Olean City School residents. The areas that we are seeing increase in revenue is primarily in the state and federal sources. Almost 70% of the money that we receive comes from state and federal sources. So we're fortunate that we are seeing that increase, primarily in foundation aid, Excel aid, and Medicaid. So we are projecting increases for next year. We will be fully funded with our foundation aid as of next year. So again, future planning, we have to be ready for that. We are not going to see that increase beyond next year. So that 0% levy increase is going to be difficult to maintain in the future. Other revenues are not significantly increasing, some minor ones from reserves, but appropriated fund balance will stay as is. Next. And last but not least, we want to remind everybody of their opportunity to vote on Tuesday, May 17th. For a few years now, we've been holding this in the Olean Intermediate Middle School Gymnasium. It works out really well there. We can spread out. It'll be 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. You can cast your ballot. You'll have a few propositions there to vote for, one being the budget. We are also looking at increasing our capital vehicle reserve. Currently, we have one for $500,000. If you look at the price of a bus, that's not going to get us far. Our goal is to be able to fund the purchase of those buses for the next 10 years. We have them on an 8-year rotation schedule. This will allow us to fund those for the next 10 years. We will move that $503,000 we currently have into the $2 million budget, or into the $2 million reserve.
Currently, what does New York State pay for funding for buses?
So currently, that's a great question, Jim. Currently, we are reimbursed for 90% of the cost of our bus. Yep, our transportation aid rate is at 90%. We strive to keep it as high as possible. So we will get 90% of the cost of that bus back this year. Coming up, our bus is just shy of $131,000. And last but not least, we have 3 board positions that you'll be voting for, 2 expiring terms and 1 vacant position. And the last screen, if you have questions, I know I've gone through it quickly, but please reach out to me. I'd love to answer any questions you may have. My contact information is there. We'll also be putting this presentation up on the website, on the business office page in case anybody has any questions, and so you can actually see the print. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you for putting all that work in. I know that was a quick.
Yeah,
brief,
that was good.
but,
They got the 2-hour version the other night.
Yeah, we did.
All right, next
But it was all great information, so thank you.
Next up, we have benchmark testing learning report. Jen Kless, thank you, Jen.
Hi, everyone. I've been asked to give you a brief report about benchmark testing and how we're using that to guide our instruction for this specific school year, as well as use that data to help us start planning for summer school instruction. In addition to using our ERLA, as well as STAR Math and STAR Reading, we've introduced 2 additional benchmarks into our testing system this school year. The first one is a phonemic awareness benchmark assessment, and that has been given to our students in grades K1-2. Now, the importance of phonemic awareness cannot be undervalued. Phonemic awareness is the building block of literacy instruction for all students, and that is built in the early grade levels, pre-K, kindergarten, first and second. So in using a phonics resource, we were able to use the phonemic awareness benchmark, and we've given it twice. We've given it in the fall, it was toward the end of October, and then we just gave it at the end of January. This data was then used to meet with teachers by grade level about their own classroom data to discuss what we needed to do next. As a result of these benchmark assessments and phonemic awareness, we have decided to use an intervention called Haggerty Phonemic Awareness, and our staff specialist, Janelle Freer, was able to train our Title I teachers, as well as our special education teachers who are self-contained, to start this intervention in a 6-week cycle, meaning we placed students in it, and then at the end of the 6 weeks, reevaluated whether they needed to continue or they had enough of the intervention to go back to not being pulled out of the classroom. The other benchmark assessment we have introduced, it's at grades K5, and that involves math. We've had our staff specialist, Jillian Putnam, work very closely with our grade level teachers to build benchmark assessments in math that are given quarterly. We just finished our third quarter benchmark assessment, and actually there's a couple grade levels still finishing that up because we're ending the quarter on March 30th. And Jillian has been able to then meet with grade level teams to discuss the data and move forward with instruction. Now, how we're using that data for summer school is this. During our data meetings for phonemic awareness, we have decided that we need to make sure we have a strong phonics component as part of our summer programming for students. We will be using American Reading Company research labs as the reading and writing instruction, and we will be able to embed a phonics piece in there for grades K1-2. Our math instruction for summer school is going to be using the resource Learn, Zern, which is aligned with our math modules, our core curriculum for math. And that provides online instruction as well as small group instruction face-to-face. That will also allow us to use, they have helped us prioritize the standards for each grade level. So teachers will be able to focus on accelerating learning in the summer to keep students where they are or accelerate their learning and ready for the next grade level. And I'm going to be here for the next one too.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for Jen? That, so.
Good for me. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Nice job.
Thank you.
Can I just have one question?
Yes.
Especially for summer, are there resources, I'm sure you do, but are there resources to give to parents to support these curriculums? I mean, I know we're only able to offer summer school, academic summer school, fairly small. But, you know, they had some of those resources for parents.
Well, those resources we use in the summer are an extension of what we're already using in the regular school year. So I will go ahead and review those resources to see what we can send home for additional support at home after that summer school instruction. But the beauty of using those resources being tied to what we're already doing in the school year, they're an extension of that or an accelerated learning piece of that, really helps keep the continuity of learning going for families.
Yeah, I'm just trying to reach that group in the middle, you know, that
Mhm.
not going to qualify to come in for summer school, we just don't have
The capacity.
And yet there's going to be kids who will fall back because they're a way to provide some.
Thank you. I will put that on my priority list. You're welcome. In response to that too, we are working very hard to keep our scope and sequence at a pace where we cover a great deal of our skill teaching somewhere in the end of the third quarter, beginning of the fourth, because any learning cycle, once you introduce a skill, you need 4 to 6 weeks of repetition and practice before that reaches mastery. So in order to stop that summer slide from happening, we really have to work on getting those skills mastered before they leave for the summer. And if you give us a couple years, we will get to that point where we predict we'll see less summer slide as the years to come.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, and then you're moving on to the next one as well, right?
Yes.
Which is the DEI work group.
Yep. So our DEI work group met again yesterday after school. We had a full house, and the first thing after sign-in, I thanked our committee members because several of them had shared resources with the group as between meetings. We had Lauren Kaya share, it was a webinar that Scott Payne did about equity in rural schools. And then we also had Karen Odell, who went to a conference and brought some information back and shared it with us about curriculum audits, making sure there was diversity and equity in curriculum. And then we also had a newspaper article from the Times Herald. Allegheny Limestone had done a diversity, equity, inclusion day as a staff development day, and one of our own, Julio Fuentes, was a presenter in there. So we were very happy about the progress we've been making and the reach we've had in other districts. After that, we started with a circle. Our DEI work group, since we began, we've started in a community building circle so that we can start building relationships with each other. These committee meetings will end up having very tough conversations. And in order to be able to have those in meaningful ways, we really need to be able to build relationships with each other. So we started with the community circle. And then we had Karen Gielan present us some information that she received at a superintendent's conference earlier in March, educational equity. And she talked about how the Capital Region BOCES work together with its 24 component school districts to use the lens of equity and inclusion through every view of school possible. Their website is very incredible, and it was very inspiring to hear how a region took this work and helped lead it for all the component districts involved in that area. Their was a very compelling statement that Karen shared with us. I think from the conference, correct? You sent us a text message with the picture. And the statement.
That's the next slide, sir. Can we go to the next slide?
And the slide states, diversity is a fact, equity is a choice, inclusion is an action, and belonging is an outcome. And so through all of this work, that's what our goal is, for everybody to feel a place of belonging and secure in our schools, whether it's a student, a family, students, families, support staff, teachers, administrators. It's for everyone. After that, we had a presentation from Mr. Justin Schack. If you do not know Justin, he is the Chief Equity and Diversity Officer at Salamanca Central School District, and he's leading the initiative within the district for inclusive curriculum and assessment. And so he presented to our group yesterday about the work he has completed with that job scope. He shared some Salamanca data with us. He shared some stories about how they've worked very intentionally to bring the Seneca culture into the living fabric of the school, the city school district of Salamanca. He talked about a mentoring program, the community outreach they are doing, and he also gave us some suggestions for professional development for our staff. Our next meeting will be in May 2022, sometime in May. And at that point, we hope to spend time in a type of work session. We want to unpack the culturally responsive sustaining education framework. And we also want to find a way to just have some good discussion about what Justin shared with us, as well as what Karen shared with us, and anything that comes along the way between now and then in a positive way to move Olean forward.
What did you say Justin's title was at Salamanca?
He is Chief Equity and Diversity Officer. You're welcome. And if you go to the website, you just have to type his name in and then it comes up. All right. Any questions? All righty. Thank you.
Nice job.
Thank you.
All right, and then we'll move on to the TABS committee report.
Okay, I have the TABS committee report. In keeping with what we did, we discussed a lot as a board how our committees need to really be focused and have a actual task. So at our last meeting, we really focused on trying to find out what would the task of the TABS committee be and what would we ask the board to task us with, because that's what we kind of have come to in our retreat, was that we want to be tasking each committee with a actual purpose. So the TABS committee is requesting that the board task our group with being ambassadors of the Olean City School District. And as such, we would need to work together, building quality and impactful relationships among all of the Husky stakeholders. If tasked with this goal, we would propose that our first initiative would be creating an employee recognition program. At the meeting, we came up with many ideas of what this program could look like. Dr. Geelan showed us, well, she shared with me and then I kind of explained to the group, and I still have to get an email out with all of the information in it, but she shared with us what she did at the Johnstown School District, and they created an ABC award, and she shared how they were running it. So that would be one of the things we could consider. We tasked ourselves with going out and trying to come up with ideas of what we would like to see included in an employee recognition program for the next meeting, and to come back and kind of discuss what that would look like, what we want to do. So if it's acceptable to the board, our goal would be to introduce our first group of honorees at the June 7th school board meeting. In addition to employee recognition, the group discussed additional activities that we could work together after this program is set up, to set up events that would encourage community building among our many district stakeholders. We talked about using models similar to maybe the Olean Young Professionals group. Cutco uses news announcements about their employees, and we even discussed a possible community kickball game. Moving forward, we would also like to propose that a possible change to this group would be changing our committee name. I have found that there is a lot of issues when you use the word tabs. And there's a historical reference to what that committee used to do and what it is currently doing. Honestly, we don't know what that committee used to do because none of us, well, with the exception of maybe Paul and maybe one or two other employees, weren't really around when that committee was up. So we would propose that we change the name of the group, and some of our creative teachers were gonna come up with some possible names for us to vote on at the next meeting. I didn't write down one, but we did talk about maybe calling ourselves the STAB committee at one point. So that's kind of what we're thinking. We would like to go with, and if it's okay with the board, we'd like to really focus on the community engagement, the employee engagement, and come up with a recognition program. Our next meeting is on April 20th, and if everybody is in agreement, we will continue these meetings. I don't know, it's not really a board agenda item. I don't know if it needed to be.
Sure. No, I think that's great suggestions there. June 7th is an ambitious timeline.
Do we need a board resolution to adopt June 7th as a date, or?
I don't think so. No. But
I mean, at some point.
to create each agreed to committee, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's something to put into the next board.
So,
Come
yeah,
up with a name.
I don't know what's our next board meeting, is it the 22nd? Okay, so it'll be after the next board meeting, we'll come up with our name and everything, but we will have that meeting. Hopefully, we will still be able to get something out by June 7th, but that would be the goal, would be to have something in place.
And if you wanted, in April, you could have a committee to be named that will, and then have the charge.
Yep.
And I would suggest that's a way to keep it moving, because this is a spirited group of people, and if they're goal oriented at this point, they don't want us to do anything that would stop that momentum.
I agree.
Right.
All right. Thanks. Does anybody else have any other questions for Kelly? Okay, then we're going to go into a presentation on the district special education plan. Marcy Johnson.
Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be with you. I just wanted to spend a few minutes and just kind of update you where things are at in special education. First of all, I get to now thank all of you for the last 2 years of extreme hard work. So honestly, thank you for all that you've done in support of us. We are really excited right now to get back into, I will call, a new normal. But our staff and our students are really settling in and enjoying the no mask mandate and all that's coming with it. So in the last 2 years, we created more self-contained classes in order for students to be able to come and participate 4 days a week and not have as much of a hybrid model as some of our other students. So now we are transitioning back to our self-contained students, especially and our students that struggle most academically, having more time back in the general education setting. So everyone is really excited about that. State Ed has been working with us last year and this year, and it's been going extremely well. State Ed has looked at over 60 files on students and all of their documentation. They've been participating in our CSE meetings. They've been visiting our classes and come to every one of our school buildings to see if IEPs are being created correctly, implemented properly, and all of them have been 100% fantastic. So they've been really pleased with all that's been happening in the special ed department. Of course, I have to just rave about our staff and our students because they are top notch. So they've just been doing an amazing job. Out of that has come a really great project, I think, that's going to be so helpful for us for many years down the road, and that is to come up with a matrix for our continuum of services. So all year long, we have worked with all the different groups of teachers to put together descriptions of what types of students would fall under each of our services on the continuum, so that we'll be able to have even better data meetings to show us what supports a student might need that's more restrictive than where they are now, and on the opposite end, less restrictive, so that we've got that ebb and flow of students moving seamlessly through the special ed continuum. So all year long, we've worked on that. We got everybody together on our staff development day in January, and we did a horizontal and a vertical alignment of this matrix. And so it's now finalized, and we're starting to roll it out to all of the teachers. We're now using it at our CSE meetings when we make decisions. It's been a really fantastic process, so I'm super excited as we tweak it and use it as we move forward into next year. The other great thing that's been happening is we had a group of students that came through the middle school a few years ago that were just right on the bubble, definitely struggled a lot academically. And so we knew that they needed some added supports, and we ended up creating a 15-1 class for them at the middle school level. So this year was their first year to be in 8th grade, and we created that model for the first time at 8th grade, and they are doing amazing. Chelsea Boker's the teacher, and she is really doing a fantastic job. So next year, we'll be continuing the program up into 9th grade, and that'll continue all the way up through our high school years so that these students will have an even greater opportunity for the local and regions diploma. So really excited about that. Any questions you might have?
Marcelo, we, at our last audit finance meeting, when we looked at the budget, it's striking. Special ed is the cost driver. Every of these special ed costs have far exceeded inflation in any other area of the budget for the last 10 years. We cannot, I mean, we are in a district with a finite tax base, kind of tax saturated, and we only receive a small portion of our funding from our local tax base, and there just isn't much more to get. So when I look at that cost growth, projected 5 years, 10 years, we are going to blow up unless something fundamentally changes about the way that we approach special ed. I'm not saying we don't give kids the services they need,
Sure.
but academic intervention has to be broader than referring kids to special ed, or our general ed kids are not going to get the education.
Yes, and that's why we have been looking at tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 interventions and how we can broaden that and really meet more students' needs in the general ed setting before, or if it even ever becomes a CSE referral. And I will just share that last year we had 35 students transfer in, and as of today, we've already had 47 students transfer in to this school district. So we're always also trying to balance the movement of students coming into our district as well. But I completely understand what you're saying. I agree.
It's not a criticism. It's
No, I
it's
completely
a fact that we
agree.
all have to deal with, you know.
For sure.
I mean, I don't want to say that we shouldn't provide services that kids need.
Right,
But we've got to be very conscious of being cost effective.
absolutely.
Or, you know, they're just, financial resources are not a bottomless pit.
Right. Mhm.
Anything else for Marcy? Thank you
All
very
right,
much.
thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, now we're going to jump to committee reports. If we could, you know, the reports that went out in the minutes or in the agenda. So I'm going to assume everybody had a chance to take a look at them. And then we'll just field questions specifically for each committee. So if there's any questions for the safety committee, we run through those quick. If not, we'll just move on.
My only question for the safety committee was around that policy that is on the agenda.
Okay. And you can talk about it.
Yeah,
Okay. All right, then we'll jump to the operations committee, same thing. It's kind of a long meeting, so there's a lot of information here. Minutes from that meeting, any questions on that?
I just, I had a couple of comments. What we're trying to do, as Kelly pointed out, we're trying to define the role of committees. And I think we've done a good job so far defining the role of the TABS committee going forward. The other functioning committees, the regular committees that we have, audit and finance, the purpose is in the name. I mean, everybody knows what that's about. The same thing with buildings and grounds. Everybody knows what that means. When we come to operations, it's much more nebulous and broad than, I mean, operations could be everything that isn't audit and finance and buildings and grounds.
And sometimes it is some of that.
Yes, and sometimes it includes that as well. So I don't know how we get a meaningful definition of what operations actually does.
Yeah, we struggle. We talked about a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I looked at that report, it was overwhelming, and you were there for over 2 hours. You were two and a quarter hours
Yeah.
in that meeting, you know, talking about everything. And I don't know how we narrow that down.
We actually did discuss that a little bit in the
Right.
meeting, and that we didn't table it, we added it to our next meeting because there was so much to discuss. And we talked about possibly breaking that committee up even into separating it, you know, because we do a lot of contracts and we do a lot of these policies. And we talked about maybe making a policy review committee that really would just be focused on that. And then that way we could, you know, define our scope of operations a little bit better. So
I think
that's in the
that
works.
might help for breaking it up into
Yeah, we also
2 or 3
discussed the
subcommittees.
fact that a lot of the things that we asked for in operations committee in the past were things like the presentations we just got from Jen and Marcy. And we discussed that instead of having those presentations be brought to operations, we would just bring them right to the board meeting so that the whole board gets the entire presentation. So that was something we kind of put on there also. And I think that we were getting close to defining that, what that committee will be.
Hopefully by the next meeting, we'll have a better idea of it, but Kelly is exactly right. I mean, there are certain things that the operations committee really needs to do. But I think that, you know, Janine had an excellent point at that, you know, we would really like to see things come here to this, even though these board meetings go on and on. You know, that they come here and then you guys task us, the board tasks us with going back and digging into it deeper at the operations committee. Really, I think it's unfair for us to see presentations like Jen Fuss gave us and Marcy gave us, because it's important that you see, the entire board sees these
I agree with that.
presentations. So, so there are certain things that the operations committee needs to focus on, that I think we were focusing on a lot more maybe than what we absolutely needed to. So I think we're, hopefully at the next meeting, we'll have a better idea of what we're kind of looking for. But operations is a huge bear.
Yeah, there was a very strong recognition that the purpose of a committee is not to see or hear a presentation.
No.
It's not to receive information as much as it is to do work.
Yes.
To do the work of the board in a smaller committee focused on whatever the task is. And I know that's what all the committees have been talking about a lot lately. It was a long meeting, but it was a fruitful meeting.
It was.
All right, so we'll talk more about that at the next meeting. Is there any other questions about
And I
operations?
think you probably noted, I just want to make sure that we know too, and I know that Jen talked to us a little bit about it, but we're well on our way with the summer school programming, so we want to make sure we get that out there, that we are, you know, definitely are moving in the right direction.
Are we using all the monies available to offer expanded programs over the summer?
Yes,
Yes,
We are,
we are.
And well ahead of where we were.
yes,
yes.
yes.
Well, that's
Important message.
that's good.
All right, we'll jump to the audit and finance. Does anybody have any questions about that one?
Another
Good job.
2 hour
Budget, everybody look at it, so I think we're good.
That was another one.
Yeah.
That's another marathon.
Okay, then we'll move on. To the board report. A couple of things. We are deep into our superintendent search for our new permanent superintendent. So last week we had our consultants down into the district. They were doing, they were gathering feedback from various stakeholder groups on Tuesday the 15th. There's been 3 other virtual sessions that were held over the last week to gather input. Also, there's been a survey available that's gotten almost 300 responses. So I think there's some good information coming from the community and the other stakeholder groups for us to consider as we move forward in the superintendent search process. We look forward to hearing the report from the consultants soon. Also, I attended the presentation that Scott Payne had via Zoom last week through the SBU School of Education, the Diversity in Rural Spaces. That's part of their spring forum on diversity, equity, inclusion. And there's going to be another presentation on April 20th. I didn't grab the woman's name, but it's a lot of interesting information.
BOE.
Oh, both, or Scott Payne was a presenter, but it was put on by the Bonna's School of Education.
Oh.
So that's,
Was that available?
it is. It's on the School of Education website. You reference some resources, and those links are also there. So that's, I encourage everybody to check that out. A lot of good stuff. That's all for what I had. Superintendent report.
It's coming. My able-bodied assistant is getting it up there for us. Looks long. I'm going to be quick and make this brief. One of the things from the very beginning is improving the beginning of my time in the district. One problem of note was communications. And I just want to report that we have PR assistants as of April 1st. Very excited to say. Also, we have a board docs upgrade. If anyone hasn't seen it, please go to our website, go to the Board of Education, click on the board docs, and all our policies are there. You're also going to see, which is going to be easier as policies get revised over time and added. It'll be easier to search and to search items through agendas. And you'll see a difference coming soon to a website near you and see the other upgrades with our agendas and our minutes. So and the other thing is we're moving to the cloud with more of our district things. We've had a lot on what everyone knows in the district as the J Drive. We're going away from the J Drive and getting more things in the cloud. That way our employees can get to important forms and information from home. So my thanks to Mr. Martell over there who was spearheading that, and he promises we're going to get that done quickly. We are doing a grants review and update some of our grants. What we put in it at the very beginning has evolved and changed a little bit, but we have administrators who are working on that and looking at the finances. We're also looking at the addition of some other positions that are sorely needed in the district, and we'll be seeing those coming up probably at our very next meeting. I have also charged the high school with looking at their credit recovery processes right now and considering a more comprehensive credit recovery program for our students that is clearly articulated to kids, teachers, and parents. So it would answer the question of what we do and when someone is not learning in real time, not wait till the end of the year and talk about summer school. And so I expect that we'll hear something very soon. They've already been working. Mr. Adriano says that the committee's already working on it. That's exciting. Our employee recruitment. We are participating in an employee recruitment fair, and we're very excited about that because as we've heard, and as you'll see later in the meeting, we have some positions to fill. And so congratulations to those
employees of ours who are retiring. We thank them all for their service. These are tough shoes to fill, and but we know that we have to try and do it. That's what we do. The capital project bids, that's been extended just a little bit, but we have our construction is to begin this summer. There's a lot that's been going on behind the scenes. I just wanted to put it out there that we are progressing. And as we know, I just want to kind of set this expectation. We have the project for this much, but with prices going up the way they are, it's gonna be a little bit smaller of a project. And we're taking the priorities that were in place from the very beginning and making sure that we fund our priorities first. So some of the little nice horns, whistles, and bells that may have been part of the project before, you might not see right away. I say might not because we put them in as alternatives. That's the way we do it in a capital project. And I'd love to see the head nodding as I'm saying this. The next thing I want to say is I've been participating in the Small City School Districts Consortium. We had another meeting, I think it was this past week. It was sometime recently, and we met with, there have been a lot of meetings, folks, I'm really sorry. But at this meeting, we had Senators Tedesco, and we had Shelley Meyer there too. And it was nice because we're all small city school districts. We have very different needs than other school districts across the state. And to have their ears, each of them for a half hour, was phenomenal. I just want you to know that that advocacy is happening on your behalf. That they need to understand that we're a small city, yes, city, but we're not a city with the kind of transportation system that you see in some of the big five, and that right outside of our borders is rural. So we become the beacon for services, and therefore we need special consideration at budget time in the state. They need to think of us differently and don't treat us like everybody else. So that's been happening. State ed, I've mentioned before, I'm on a committee and have been for curriculum with the New York State Council of School Superintendents. We've been talking about teacher certification, and we're seeing changes at the state level, which is fantastic. They are speeding up teacher certification. They're looking at the challenges we have with special education, and I think we'll see those changes very soon. They also discussed computer science. And there's the SOS opportunity, the SOCE, for teachers who are currently teaching one incidental outside where they can apply for it and get that accreditation. They're also looking, this is a little different because we're computer science. It's only a 12 credit program, not your usual 30 credit program. But there's mentioned computer science because you are going to see, mark my words, a change coming down very soon about computer science education and being part of our standards. So it's going to be really important for our teachers. And they say that if you have taught it since 2017, you don't have to teach it this year, but if you have been teaching it, you fall under that grace period to be able to get this certification added onto your cert. Regents exams, they are happening this year. They'll be scheduled for June and for August, the full complement. And what they have not determined yet at the state, please don't kill the messenger on this. They have not determined what graduation requirements and the Regents exams, how they'll be figured into graduation for our current seniors. We let them know that not only are we concerned about our seniors right now, but and our juniors who have the last 2 years with their Regents exams not being met. But it's also for school districts, not us, but some school districts who semester, to have those exams in June, but you didn't have the exams in January, becomes an issue. So they said, yes, we're listening, so we'll see what happens. Diploma pathways, we're also looking at new pathways that are coming up. They did say thank you for all the input. I hope that a lot of folks from around here have also put in their 2 cents on what we think diplomas should look like. And there was a stress that came from the field on financial literacy. So I would expect we'll see more about that when they make changes to Part 100. The New York State 3 through 8 testing program. This is the last year of the science exam for youngsters. And next year, the exam will not be given for 4th grade. The new exam will not be given for 5th grade because this year's 4th graders are taking the last exam
And then that new fifth grade exam will be in years after that. On the website on the New York State Education Department shows a great graphic of when these new tests are coming in. I'm just here to report that we're on top of it here. We're just hoping that we heard about benchmarks earlier, that the tests that our students take this spring in grades 3 through 8 will help us tremendously to see exactly individually and by classroom where they are. It'll help us serve their needs. This is not a gotcha test. We have been teaching the same standards that are going to be tested. They have made tremendous changes to the tests according to the needs that we have articulated throughout the state about whether or not they're timed, how long they are, how long kids have to take them, and also that teachers, this is key, teachers have been making more of the exam itself. So they're writing the questions, it's not being written from an outside group. But that's coming up, and I'm sure you'll hear that from your principals. That's my report.
There's a couple students here. Do they have to stay till 10 or can they get their papers signed?
No, I think they've been here long enough.
We saw their reaction after she reported that regions are
Plus,
happy.
they have to
They
take
probably
regions
did all
exams.
that. Go study for your regions.
All right. All right, then we'll get to the most exciting part. of the agenda, the
It
consent
really
agenda.
does get more exciting as we go on.
Okay, I'll take your word for it. Girls.
Buddy's one out, one up. Last one, play again Tuesday.
Oh,
We're scheduling any
I'm
meetings,
not-
That's amazing.
Tuesday.
it sounds like it was on Wednesday.
there you go.
All right, so I'm gonna look for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Julio.
I like your shirt, by the way.
Good night. Any discussion on that?
I'm sorry, but I do have one question. Which is, I noticed that some of the interfund transfers that are on the consent agenda, there's also a more than $50,000 interfund transfer, mostly for the utilities. Are those double counted or are we have, they're separate?
No, there's separate. I think there's a separate.
It just means that we have spent a lot of money on it.
Yes.
Yes.
And you will see gas coming next month.
That's it.
Okay. Anything else? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? So I think we're going on to new business. No, it's not. Here it is. Okay, I got it. Okay. So we have a resignation letter from Tyrone Hall. I'm looking for a motion to accept that.
So moved.
Paul?
Second.
Jim, thank you. Any discussion?
Yeah, I'd like to thank Tyrone for the limited time that he has been here, and hopefully he got a lesson on what we actually do here and shares that with the community in a positive way.
Yes, thank you, Tyrone. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Then we have an MOA with the Teachers Association about the retirement extension.
Sure.
Thank you, Jim.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mary. Any discussion?
Just my thanks to both sides for considering this on behalf of our employees who needed that extra time to make this very important decision.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Then we have an MOA with the Administrators Association.
Sure.
Is that in there?
Yes.
This was the one that was added today.
Yeah,
Oh.
It came
It
late.
came later.
Does anybody have?
I was just going up.
I have looked at that. Oh, they did come today. copy of it with her?
I'm sorry, but I just didn't get a chance to see it.
That's quite all right. Okay.
All right, did anybody have, make a motion on it?
So moved.
Thank you, Paul.
Sure.
Thank you, Jim. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Then we have an MOU with St. Bonaventure for their evacuation plan.
So moved.
Thank you, Mary.
Second.
Thank you, Janine. Any discussion on that one? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We have a budget transfer over $50,000 because of our utility bills.
So moved.
Thank you, Mary.
Second.
Thank you, Paul. Any discussion?
Solar panels in the future?
Not a bad idea. We're looking.
Yeah. Yeah.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Then we need to create the speech pathologist position.
Yes, so moved.
Thank you, Mary.
Sure.
Thank you, Jim. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We have a internal controls risk assessment and report corrective action plan.
So moved.
Thank you, Janine.
Sure.
Thank you, Jim. Very exciting read. All those in favor? Yeah, we did discuss this.
Yeah.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We have a school.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. We have a school volunteer, Eric Martino, for volunteer softball.
Yep, so moved.
Thank you, Mary.
Second.
Thank you, Paul. Any discussion?
Thank you, Eric.
So our unpaid volunteers, are they subject to all the same regulations as us?
Yes. Since this person is a volunteer and not a district employee, are there ever any insurance concerns that might arise, if that person were injured, for example?
It's a good question. They fall under our policy. That's why we're approving the person here right now. So they fall under our policy just like any other employee. Yeah.
All right, good.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Then we have a cooperative natural gas bid proposals.
So moved.
Thank you,
Second.
Go ahead.
Janine. Paul, any discussion on this one? Yeah, another second read, I hope you do a good job. Yes, cheaper price. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? There's a DECA overnight trip to approve that happened in March.
So moved.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Julio. Any discussion?
Yeah, if anybody got an opportunity to check out the DECA conference, tell you, these kids are razor sharp. I mean, I'm looking at them, and, wow, I am impressed. Obviously, when you're going to the state conference, you get a lot of quality students and ones that have a passion and a drive. And kudos for them for sticking out, especially the last 2 years when COVID kicked in, so.
And we should compliment again that we had some recognized.
Yeah, I will point out
For outstanding performance.
my young lad, he's a vice president of finance and competition, so he gets double duty.
All right.
So he's learning fast.
Good.
Yeah, shout out to our teachers too. for running
Yeah,
that.
and you had a number of kids that went too, that was great. too.
Yeah,
To see.
I think it was called 7 or 8.
Yeah, that's a big number.
And one of them did win a medal, so congratulations to the whole team and their advisors.
Absolutely. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We have to indemnify in litigation for Dr. Karen Nealon.
So
Thank you, Mary.
Second.
All those in favor?
Any discussion?
Any discussion?
sorry.
Opposed? Abstentions? We have the 6th grade Explorers Club overnight trip.
Yeah, so
Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Julio. Any discussion on that one? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, moving on to personnel. This first item, I would look for a motion to postpone this
So
until
moved.
the next meeting.
I second.
All
Give it.
right, Julio's got that. So that's a motion to postpone this until the next meeting, which is April 19th. Thank you. Any discussion on this?
Yeah, we can change the date up.
No, I think the date is correct.
It's okay.
The date is correct.
Okay.
We're just postponing it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, we have an unpaid leave of absence for Stacy Penner.
So moved.
Thank you, Jim.
Second.
Thank you, Janine. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We have a retirement resignation with deep regret of Elaine Steffen, speech language pathologist, effective July 1st.
So moved.
Thank you, Karen.
Second.
Jim? Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We have a teacher retirement for Karen Rogozinski effective July 1st, 2022. Thank you, Janine.
Sure.
Thank you, Jim. I just want to say that for these retirement resignations, a lot of these are longtime teachers, and it's very awesome.
Yeah.
Karen, Elaine, all,
Sherry, yeah.
Yeah.
Rose, Sherry, all.
And obviously, we want to thank each and every one of them for the dedicated years of service for our kids, our community, and the district.
Absolutely. But we'll move on to the business part of it. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? We have a retirement resignation for Diana Dunbar.
So moved.
Thank you, Mary. Jim? This is effective December 7th. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We have a teacher retirement resignation with deep regret for Rose Gate.
So moved.
Thank you, Janine.
So, second.
Thank you, Jim. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We have a retirement resignation with deep regret for Sherry Bowser, effective July 1st. Thank you, Mary.
Kelly.
Oh, sorry, Kelly.
I'll second.
They sound the same, don't they?
Sound like it. Sit next to each
So excited about this
other.
one. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We have a retirement resignation with deep regret of Jeannie Christina.
So moved.
Thank you, Mary, but that's not till next June.
Yeah, that's what you did, 23.
23.
Well, that's setting,
Staying.
yeah,
I'll
see
second.
that, setting
Thank you,
things in motion.
Janine. Any discussion on that one? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We have a teacher retirement resignation with deep regret of Christine Stavish.
So moved.
July 1st. Thank you, Mary.
Second,
Thank you, Jim. Any discussion?
yeah, that would be one of our
Who's gonna
decade
take over
advisors.
the deck?
Yeah.
That would be one of our,
That's not part of the resolution.
Yeah, no, it's just a question.
just a comment.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We have a teacher aide retirement, deep regret, Roberta McAfee.
So
Thank you.
Second.
All right,
You can take it for.
any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Now we have an appointment, all right, for a food service helper. It's Jocelyn K.M. Cologne Sierra.
So moved.
Yeah.
Oh, Julio, sorry,
Thank
Julio.
you, Julio.
Put you down there.
Mary, I'll give you a second.
Well, good enough, thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We have a speech language pathologist appointment for Angela Catone.
So moved.
Second.
All, thank you. Any discussion on this one?
So this is filling a currently vacant position.
that's the one you just
Created
created earlier in the meeting.
APR.
This is the one for 2024.
No,
Well, it
This
goes
is
to,
one-
It goes, it's funded through
Now.
2024.
Right.
it's the APR funded position.
Yes.
Funding ends.
it ends,
The funding is.
Not necessarily.
But it's the APR funded position.
So was, when we put this out there, like back in January, it was, we just haven't created the position yet.
It was on our plan, our APR plan. I think two of them.
so you bring up a good point. We had talked about, do we create a position, but at the time, we didn't have anyone to fill it. So to create a position and leave it hanging was more challenging than to wait, because it's easier to lose track. We're trying very hard to control our positions, staff position control in the district. As you'll see that the previous hire here was for April Winter's position. That's in parentheses there.
So for the retirement of the speech pathologist, then that we also have, that we just accepted, we'll have to fill that position as well.
We may or may not, depending on student need, and that'll go through conversations with special education department and where we are with our student needs. Correct.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, that is it for the first.
I did just want to interject, I apologize. Angela reached out to me earlier today. She had a previous commitment. She wanted to extend thanks to the board. She's very excited to come forward. That's where I relay that information to all of you. So she required something.
All right, thank you. All right, that's it for personnel then. On to the discussion items. We have a second read for the use of assistance animals. Can I get a motion for that?
So this is to adopt.
This is to adopt, yes. I need a motion.
So Jim made a motion, and I will second.
Thank you, Mary. Any discussion on this?
I'm sorry, with all the stuff that we had to read, have we ironed out the concerns that we had? Or is this the same policy that we talked about a month ago?
This is the same policy.
It's the same policy, but yes, it irons out any concerns that we had before it was even brought to the first read.
Okay.
Are we good to take a vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We have a second reading of the staff use of computerized resources policy. This one has had a few revisions to it.
Just a few?
Those provisions were based on interactions with various stakeholders. I discussed extensively at operations.
It is, and that's the reason why on this particular one too, we don't have a resolution to adopt yet because it's still in that process. But it's an acknowledgement that there has been a lot of discussion and a lot of input from employees and committee members. And there has been even more discussion about it, and once something is put in, brought back to them. We still have to have another conversation with our teachers union and also with our administrators who have provided some input. We've made some of those changes, but we haven't circled back yet. So we, out of respect of that, just to let everyone know that we're making changes and we've made some changes, but that's where we are right now in the policy. We also, and thank you, Vicki. Thank you for keeping track of all the many changes that we've had. And it's easy to lose sight when you have a lot of these. So it's, we have that clean copy, but we also have the copy that shows what's been struck, what's been moved, and what's been added.
I would just like to say on behalf of operations that I thought the input we got from staff and teachers was extremely helpful. I mean, this is a very difficult policy. Some of the changes that were suggested, it's like, wow, this is great, and it really struck home. You should have thought of that before.
Yeah, I thought it was very helpful too, as well. Just when you think you've thought it all, you realize you haven't.
I'd like to commend the operations committee for their hard work on this and just acknowledge the fact that we seem to be proceeding slowly, but we're proceeding cautiously and taking everything into account that we need to take into. So,
I mean, every time we look at it,
yeah.
I think it gets better.
We're
Trying.
trying.
So it's,
The conversations will happen before the next operations meeting, so we'll be able to maybe finish this.
We're going to do our very best to do that. If we come to an agreement with everything, but I'm feeling very optimistic. It's been a very productive talk during this last month.
I would say.
Yeah, I think the last couple of points were pretty close. Any other discussion on this? All right, then we'll go ahead and move on to the facilities inspection, operation and maintenance revised policy.
This is where I think the safety committee is involved in revisions to this policy and this policy, and I just have one concern. It seems like at times in the policy, we assume as a district responsibility over the conduct of the third party. That is, there are places in the policy that says a contractor or that would be somebody who was contracted for in the district will abide by various safety regulations, et cetera, et cetera. It's not that I don't want them to do that, but what happens is if we make that our policy, then basically we are making ourselves responsible for their conduct in ways that we may not be able to control. And it just creates legal liability and exposure. Again, I'm not saying that contractors shouldn't comply with safety regulations, but I'm saying that's on them. And to the extent the district can't make them do it, don't have the controls in place. I think of how many times have you seen people up on roofs without safety conscious? How many times have you seen people climbing ladders without tying them off? Is that our responsibility, or is that the contractor's responsibility and the contractor's responsibility over their subs? And that's what I want to kind of think about with this policy. How do we, again, I'm not saying no, don't be safe. I'm saying let's not assume we control people that we don't actually.
Well, it might be more of a liability disclaimer because I had the privileges when I was in Rochester. Property was owned by Kodak, but I worked for Ortho Clinical Diagnostics. And you had to take their safety courses and you had to take Kodak's because it was on Kodak property, so you had double duty. That's probably fixing that same market where it's more of a disclaimer, but just let it follow certain safety protocols.
I think, Janine, to your point too, this is why it's so important as we go into capital projects that we have our insurance agents and our attorneys review the insurance requirements of the contractors. Because you're right, it does become a sticky situation. So our insurance agents and the attorneys review the contractor's agreement, their contracts with us, and it specifies all the insurance requirements that they have. So before we even sign that contract with them, we get to review that.
Which is great, and obviously that's a great deal of protection for the district. But then I wonder, do we need this policy that says that then we're responsible? If we're contracting with them and shifting that responsibility as we should to them, I think, under contract, then let's be careful about the language of our policy so that it doesn't undermine the contractual shifting that you're trying to make. Again, it's a matter of just being careful about how we word things. But I don't want somebody coming back and suing the district because we have a policy that says that we control our contractors, even though we have a contract that says we don't. That inconsistency can be us.
We have a responsibility to control our contractors, so to supervise as part of.
But we could say that our responsibility is to enter into a contract. I mean, rather than, again, I know for sure, we all know for sure, that nobody from the school is going to be making sure that these guys tie off their laps, right? I mean, we just know that doesn't happen. I don't think it happens. I don't see how it can. It does.
Yes, that's why we have people who are on site, who are watching those kinds of things and inspecting those kinds of things.
Our employees.
Our employees and our construction management groups. That's why we have a construction management group.
Right, but that's who holds that responsibility, not our employees. That construction, that's what we pay those guys to do. So let's just think about the policy with those contracts.
Well, if there is an accident, they're not gonna just go after one person, they're gonna go after everybody. So, of course.
And we want to show in our contracts that we contracted with somebody who's going to take that responsibility, and it wasn't on our.
Well, it's up to the lawyers to figure all that stuff out, because fix it.
What we're doing right now. Well, I mean, I want the lawyers to review the contracts. I just want to read the policy with that concept in mind. Let's not take on more responsibility by policy than we are by contract.
And was there something in here in particular that was problematic that you would like to have revised, or did you have a recommendation for the revision?
I don't have it with me, but I did have particular language.
I mean, like I'm looking at it right now, it says these procedures will include a plan to ensure that all contractors comply with all health and safety issues and regulations and wear photo identification badges. I mean, I guess we can probably hope that they're wearing those badges or whatever, but again, what's our plan to ensure that all contractors comply? Is that what you're talking about?
That's the kind of thing, it's like, and it doesn't take much of a change. It says, we shall enter into contracts with, that require them to.
Right.
Not that we're gonna have a plan.
Because, what's our plan and how are we gonna ensure it?
To that specifically, I can tell you, all of the contractors who came to the walkthrough were given a lot of that information as well.
Right. That's just an example, that's one of the things.
Yeah. Again, the goal is to have everybody comply with it. It's just, it's not take on more responsibility.
All right, I think that's good discussion for the first read. Discuss some more. Anything else on that one? We're going to move on to the school safety plans, the first reading.
Skip
School safety three.
Oh, sorry. Fire drills, bomb threats, bus emergency. First reading. Sorry.
Yes, don't forget that.
All right, any discussion on that?
One sentence says the fire and emergency drills will be held at least 12 times in each school year. Is that per school? Is that? Yep, every school building. Should that be written in here that it's per school or?
Well, it's a district state, but that's not like it.
I just wasn't sure, because I questioned it, so I wasn't sure if that was what it meant, if it needed to be written or not. So which part do you think would be unclear that we should change? I mean, just whether or not it's per district or is it per building? I mean, are we having 12 drills within the district or 12 drills within the building? 8 of those drills have to be held, you know. And then there's information about fire escapes. We need to be writing in here which of these buildings those types of things actually apply to, or. But it does say it's under each of its building level school safety plans. Every building must have its own building level school safety plans, and in each one of them incorporates all of the above.
Does that include the sports
Yes.
complex in a professional building?
No, because students are not assigned to that building.
Okay.
It's only schools or buildings where students are assigned each day.
Yeah, I mean, I do see under fire and emergency drills, the administration of each school building will instruct and train students. And then that next paragraph kind of fits under there, so I think with the idea that yes, each building will hold them at least 12 times in each school year.
That we're taking care of.
Any other items?
A lot of it's just, verbiage instead of administrative regulations, it's written procedures. It's just-
On page 3, there's a typo. Page 3, sentence 2, the last word, it says the, it should say the.
I got it. Thank you. All right. We'll circle back to that. Now the school safety plan. Any discussion on that? Policy revision. You like it as is? We'll tell you next month. All right. Discussion on that. All right, we'll move on to the organizational plan and instruction first reading.
Yeah, this one definitely needed a good look at.
We're just updating our policies. This one we noticed had been there for quite a while in our school reconfiguration, our organizational plan changed.
Yep.
I had a question about this one because it says neighborhood schools in the first paragraph. Does it need to say neighborhood schools? I mean, what? No, you know what? It doesn't. We should strike that. Good recommendation.
Yeah,
Got it.
you're right.
And then that second part of that sentence, it says 7 and 8. It says thought, it should say through. And then we reference the neighborhood schools again in the second paragraph.
Could we fix that just by saying school buildings, elementary schools, and secondary schools?
Say between our 2 elementary schools. Our elementary schools are built, are they
Right,
not?
we don't
through
have all of
boundary
our
lines?
elementary students.
So
in
they
the
are,
elementary
except
school
they are
buildings.
not.
Yeah.
There is a flex
There's a flex.
area where if one elementary school has more students going to it, then we could flex them to the other one.
Yes.
You also can, I believe, speak with the individual principals and get permission if you provide the transportation to take your child to the opposite.
Provided there's room.
Well, with principal, like approval.
So, okay.
I think we probably should incorporate the records to that.
Yeah.
We have that?
We did.
Yeah,
We
the
did.
board adopted that at the beginning of the 2021 school year, that summer. I believe in July.
I remember.
Yes.
It was during COVID. It was in August
Of
go right into
2020.
it was July or August of 2020.
Yeah,
I have
2020.
asked the administrators to review this policy before we brought it to your attention.
Yes,
It
we'll,
was,
we'll incorporate that language. I completely agree, especially if you had passed a resolution to that effect, it should be incorporated into this policy.
yeah.
For sure. We'll do that for the second reading. That's why we do this first reading.
2020.
Yeah, 2020, summer 2020.
For the 2021 school year, yeah. Excellent, thank you. I know there's many board docs and searches. We could go to board docs and search from what I understand.
All right, anything else on there? Not today. Anybody else? The last one on our list then, right? Non-resident student tuition.
Yeah.
Discussion on that.
Discuss this quite a bit, operations too.
I think we changed it once in the last 10 years.
Yeah, we haven't changed it since I.
What did you decide
Well,
as a result of your discussion?
we decided we need to before.
Yeah, you said push it to the whole
Because
board.
we already knew what we were gonna say anyways, but.
Beating my head against the wall.
We did strike that non-district student currently enrolled that was outdated in the 2007, 2008 school
Yeah,
year.
Right, yeah.
Got rid of that.
We talked about the tuition amounts a little bit, but not, we can come to a resolution on that, so that we have to change this policy of
We talked about making it the same for both levels.
K through 5 and 6 through 12 being the same. Most of the school districts did have it at the same level. And we talked about doing a staggered increase over like the next 5 years to get them to enroll.
So it doesn't jump several $100.
So to be clear, that was to keep it, it was either to keep it at 400, 700, and then the next year, 500, 700, and then the next year, 600, 700 to get to the 700, 700. I don't know if we even discussed the actual dollar amounts because I think it was unclear if we wanted to keep it the 700 at 700 or if we wanted to somewhat increase that amount as well. So I don't know that we even came to a complete amount. We did it, which is why we brought it here. Right. So was but we did talk about, we were interested in seeing those two amounts be equal. And Dr. Gillen gave us a breakdown of what the other local school districts are offering and where they sit. I mean, Allegheny was like astronomical.
Much higher.
I mean, they were in the thousands.
4 times higher.
Yeah.
Right.
Portville was actually not higher.
No.
Portville
Portville
was
was
lower,
lower,
but they were
believe.
the same for both levels, I believe.
Still.
Actually, there used to be a reason as I recall having a discussion years ago, school districts usually when they want to charge higher tuition rates, is to, as a deterrent, to get kids from out of the district to their district. That was a discussion back in the day. It may apply now for the school districts that really charge quite a bit. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, I think you have to think hard about what what is the purpose of us charging Andy? And I think that's, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't charge anything, I think actually we should, but we're not recapturing the amount of money that it costs our district to have a student attend. And that's,
Not even.
I don't know, it's what, $10,000, $11,000 or something like that for a gen ed student. A lot more for special ed students. So it's not as though the tuition is recapturing that, but we do get state aid on every student we bring in here. And then some of our aid is based on enrollment. So to a certain extent, higher enrollment helps us. So these students coming to the district generate revenue. It's not simply a cost of the district. We talked about, and this is probably how Allegheny does it, of charging the local share, which would be roughly a third of what the total cost is, 30%, actually about 70% of our state money. That may be kind of a rational approach, but again, it's either getting $0 or getting 70%, and getting 70% is better than getting $0. So to our perspective, increasing enrollment is probably whole fiscally beneficial, but we don't want people to come for the wrong reasons. You know, I mean, we want people to actually make a choice about sending their kids to Olean as opposed to the local district. I don't know. I mean, just not whimsically or not because they don't like the teacher, or you know, that, and so having a little bit of a cost involved, $500-700, that's not a trivial amount of money. It makes them, I think, makes people make the decision for a meaningful reason for themselves and their children, not just because, you know, they get into an argument with their child's teacher in first grade and they decide, well, you know, so there should be some cost.
There's one thing that does come to mind that you brought up before. We pay a huge amounts for special needs, special education. A lot of times we may get students from outside the area that would take advantage of that, even though it does become more of a cost to us for those kids. And that's a lot of the reasons. Probably one reason why a lot of districts charge more to get in, which we do not, because we like those kids. But there may come a time when we're top loaded so much that we may have to change that philosophy and pricing.
Well, we decide if we're overcrowded, we don't let them in the first place. That's up to the superintendent, and that's written right here in this policy. It says if we don't have room for a student, we won't let them come, whether we're charging for it or not.
Well, we got lots of.
I mean, we may have lots of room, but the policy, I mean, is written so that it's really up, that it gives the superintendent discretion over whether or not a student will come in. I mean, in fact, we don't want students who are failing. I mean, you can't come here if you're gonna fail classes.
Or not, there's going to class.
I mean, there's multiple reasons that we won't let a student in if they are choosing to open enroll here and pay it. No, once they're here,
No, Jim, we want
that has to be looked at yearly, and every year they have to apply to come. I mean, this whole policy has, you know, dates on it as to when they have to get to Vicky and say, I want my child to come here again, then it has to be reviewed yearly.
That's why we're doing it.
That's why this one here, and, you know, that says June 1st, we've changed dates and taken things out. I mean, we're doing it now because these people have to get to Vicky by April 1st, and say they want to come.
Tell her, so we.
Which was why we were talking about not necessarily raising the tuition this year, because the date is coming up so soon.
We have to raise it. Like I said, I think we raised it one time since I've been.
It hasn't been raised.
Not,
No.
maybe we talked about it.
What changed is on page 2, the sliding scale.
Right. Okay.
That's what changed. Since the discussion of this policy.
We also do still have a waiver for those children.
For the students of employees, yes.
And so many of the students that come to our district who aren't local are actually children of employees, and they don't pay.
And I can't remember, but were there any other schools that did have that sliding scale?
Yeah.
Was there?
Most use some kind of prorated, and so it might not be in their policy as a scale, but you'll see the words in their policy of being prorated.
Okay. We just have a nice little schedule.
My thought is, at this point, is that we're not really, we're not talking about a large number, a large effect financially on the school district, because the numbers are so low of people that participate in this. And I would suggest that leave as is until it becomes a problem. If we have 100 or 150 kids that want to enroll in here over a year, then we'll have an issue. We'll have to make some decisions. But at this point, I think we're looking at very small numbers.
Do we have a current figure of how many students actually pay tuition?
I think it's 20.
It's less than 20.
I think it's like 14.
Yeah.
I was gonna say 12.
Yeah.
How many students from out of district receive a waiver?
Students of,
I've approved non-employees. Oh, you mean a waiver who are not children of employees,
No, that are
right?
children.
That are children of
Oh, I
employees,
see.
yeah, they would be the only ones who would receive the waiver.
My recollection, Paul, is that more than half the students that were coming from children, so that I don't know, it's 20 years.
Is there any possible liability for saying these kids don't have to pay, even though they're out of district, whether they're employees or not, or children of employees or not, you know, but
As
these
of
kids do.
September, there were 37 students.
What kind of liability do you mean?
Well,
It's a question.
My question, could we face a possible discrimination case?
No, it's
Because-
a policy.
Because we,
It's a rational basis for distinguishing.
I'll shut up.
Don't be teasing us.
Oh, we can take it out of this one.
You know,
We just leave it.
It's been a long-standing practice in many school districts for many years.
no, I understand,
So it's
you know,
well tested.
I understand everyone's rationale for charging tuition, but there was a time when we charged no tuition. And, you know, it seems to me that by charging tuition, you're limiting, even though everybody says, well, it's not that much money, it could be that much money to certain families. That's all I'm saying, that's all I ever said, but, hey. Banging my head against that wall for a long time.
Yeah, we're-
I could say.
Yes, you can.
No, I mean,
Right.
it's not that we don't take that, I don't think it's not going to.
You know, and the amount that we've received is so negligible.
Hey, we want to
It's a
shoot for
token
11 o'clock
amount.
here or what?
We're on our way.
You know,
My suggestion is.
could we offer scholarships?
Those are pretty good. Yeah.
For now, change it.
Well, I mean, it's gonna come up again next month.
I mean, I think the operations committee recommended leaving the pricing as is for this year, and then we could, you know, at the next meeting, I think we might even have on there that we were gonna discuss if we were going to be raising it, what we would be equalizing it to and over what time period.
You can have this discussion on a yearly basis too, so.
This is our discussion.
Well, we have the same discussion every year.
No, we don't say, we have every year.
We need to make a decision on the dollar amounts.
Right.
Because there's a specific time frame that
You
letters
go
have to
first.
go up.
No, I think the recommendation, if I remember, we've got stick with what it
It
was
was.
for this school year because we were getting too close
Because
to
of-
April.
But
And then for our next, just to have this conversation earlier, if we were going to equalize it.
But we've had this conversation numerous times, we've had it with
We've
Jenny.
had it every year
In the
since I've been
summer.
on the board.
I know, but even not because of this, but we even talked about it back when we were going over all the additional funds that we're getting. You remember, we went over it with Jenny back in the summertime.
We went over it with Jenny, I thought last year.
At this
Last
point, I
summer.
mean, when you have a non-resident student come into the district, you get that foundation aid on that student. That $8,000 to $9,000 in foundation aid that you get from a child enrolling in our district is much more substantial than the $200, $300, $400 you get from that non-resident tuition.
That's always been my point.
So the enrollment, but on the other hand, I think it's important that people, when they do send their students here, there is that piece that typically a taxpayer would pay for their students living in the district. This is just sort of that little piece that because they're not a taxpayer, they have to pay something.
But it's
helping.
With the
Right.
enrollment.
I kind of agree with Paul.
Right, and our enrollment's going down.
I think we should wait that to get more kids.
Thank you.
Well, Paul is so happy.
I've never had that. Even one other.
Julio. Did you see the smile on Paul's face? He just lit up like a little Christmas tree over there.
I'll take it to the next.
Like he's been.
That's right.
The margin that we
You want
get
to
is.
go to Madison Square?
The margin that we're getting from these is
It's just
maybe
not.
nothing to our district, but it might be something to a family in a poor district, which is our surrounding district, to be honest, so.
And it's our district too,
That's what I'm
we're
saying.
getting much more by having the student here than we're recouping, with a few $100s.
Change it,
But hey,
What's your proposal?
change it,
$100?
zero.
my proposal is, it always has been to look at the lowest district amount that, of our surrounding districts, it's
Like-
not zero.
Just keep,
let
me just push this out there though, just keep in mind to the taxpayers of this community who are paying, who reside here, who are sending their children here, those individuals coming in from outside are not paying that taxpayer
But they're paying
share.
taxes to their own
Well,
district.
yeah, but town of Porterville,
I
my
mean-
house in the town of Porterville is not paying the same taxes as my house in the city.
Right. So to the taxpayer who is paying that, just keep in mind, it may have a negative thought left.
I don't think most taxpayers care,
Huh?
I really don't think we're gonna have
But
a
if I could send my
uprising because
I certainly would.
we're suddenly charging $200 instead of $400 or
So my
something like that.
question is,
Yeah,
does the money that we're gonna get from the federal aid of it, does that offset what the taxpayers pay? We get more money here. Shouldn't that offset what the taxpayers pay?
I think it more than offsets it.
So what my recommendation would be is that you keep everything as is and we go back to the table and really educate ourselves on what aid we get per child, what aid comes from the state aid, what comes from the taxpayers, and then make a better educated decision for moving forward. Because it can be complicated, but there's a state portion, there's a local taxpayer portion.
I think you can start to dig into numbers like that a lot more.
We had that conversation at audit and finance as well.
Well, all right, I like that idea. Let's dig into it a little bit deeper. Julio, your points are well taken.
So which committee is tasked with that job?
Operations, of course. Well, no, it could be audited, it could be audited and finance, it could be audited.
Be Jenny running the numbers, so.
Yeah,
Put it on.
Just about every.
So can we move on this policy as it is for now, because we do have April 1st coming around the corner, we cannot wait.
Yeah.
Right.
do we have to move?
Yes, we have to.
I mean, we have a policy that's in place, right?
There's not a motion on the table for this, is there?
No.
No,
It's not.
I
This
mean,
is
we
a-
have a policy
this is
in
a
place,
first
we're
reading.
just trying
We can
to.
waive the second reading.
We could waive the second reading and adopt
And
it.
adopt this policy, yes.
But we don't have to, do we?
Well,
But if you
Eventually.
don't-
Why do we have a gun to our heads?
Because we just explained that to you, Paul.
This was a first reading, right?
April.
Right, I understand April first, but I mean, if it's April first, then we still have a policy in place that'll be there April first. We're talking about revising it at the next meeting.
If you tell people their expectations is that they're going, well, I mean, I guess we can only decrease the amount, probably can't.
Yeah. I mean,
I think we
That's
listen
the
to our
proposal,
business
is the
administrator, so
understanding.
she can give everybody a lesson as to funding and aidability.
I think that
I
we
think-
have to stick with what we've got this year, because it's not
I
fair
think
that
we do
people
too.
have to find what their expectations.
And I mean, we're expecting that they're going to let us know by April first, I think that we need to have the expectation of the board here that we.
who's asking to have it done by
The
April?
non-resident families.
It's a policy.
Yeah.
To enroll their children shall submit a request to the
But
superintendent
does
for April
this
1st of the current year.
policy expire if we don't change it or we don't act on it tonight? Doesn't it stay the same?
It does, but if we are then telling parents that we might change it before they actually bring their children to
Yeah.
the district, that doesn't seem to me to be fair. That when they make their decision.
They need to know what what the policy is.
People don't need a
decision is
shock
gonna
factor
cover
coming in.
Next year as of April.
That's what I'm trying to say, I mean, we're expecting them to let us know, we have to have the expectation that we've approved this policy.
And remember, it's not just our policy that comes up with April first. That's in New York State education law
Right.
about April first. So it's not an arbitrary date that we've come up with or
Right.
that some other previous school board. I just wanted to make that clear.
Thank you.
And that law section is 1709-13, 2045, 3202.
So can I make a suggestion? Next year, when we talk about this, can we do this a month earlier?
Well, that's what we were just saying, was that we would like to leave this as is for this year, and then over the course of the next, year, have this in place before. I mean, and if we were to go to that scale of, slowly escalating, we could put that in place in September. It doesn't have to wait until now. If we're gonna do an escalation, or if we're gonna get rid of it altogether, whatever we decide. I mean, that doesn't have to be done in March every year.
It should be aligned with our
I mean,
5-year plan.
That's what we were saying, was it would be a 5-year plan of escalating, and there was I remember there was a reason we picked 5 years. It was part of that 5-year plan. But, I mean, if the 5-year plan is gonna be to be at 0 for the next 5 years, so be it, but it doesn't have to be. You don't have to wait till March.
So next February it is.
I mean, I would personally move to adopt the policy as we made the changes with the pricing that it currently sits, because I don't think it's a big deal to charge these prices.
Is that a motion to waive the second reading?
As a motion to waive the second reading and adopt the policy.
And I will second that.
That was Mary. Any discussion on that?
You want more?
Any further discussion? Seeing none. I'll take the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
That's it, no? Yes. I just, be an aye.
So
Abstentions?
it passes.
It's 5-2.
So we
Registering
need-
our dissent.
All right, that's it for policy for today. That's some informational items. Board nominating petitions are available. Contact Vicky. She will get you that information. OC's annual dinner meeting is Wednesday, April 6th. We've got some board meeting on the 19th, audit finance on the 21st, ops on the 25th, buildings and grounds on the 26th. We canceled one this one. Did we reschedule or are we just gonna move?
The building grounds is supposed to be tomorrow, Vic, or
The 20th.
There it is. All right, thank you. Okay, is there a need for executive session?
We do.
Okay,
Have a meeting.
I'll look for a motion to,
So moved.
thank you, Julio.
Wait a second.
Looking for a second.
Sure,
Proposed pending or current litigation. And number 8, the proposed acquisition, sale, or lease of real property, or the proposed acquisition of securities, sale, or exchange of securities that only come publicly with substantially effective real.
say that again real fast.
Real estate. Real property. Yeah. Did you get the second on that?
Is it all real property that, that's all we're discussing?
No, there's litigation.
There's litigation.
I got you. So who made the motion? Who seconded it? I didn't hear.
I'll second.
Thank you, Janine. Are we inviting anyone else in? No? All right. Okay.
I love their faces though, man. What's over there?
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention?
10 o'clock, is that right?
Sure.
Oh, my goodness.
That's fine.
I'm not leaving here till